Welcome to my channel. Now, I told you guys what was going to happen last week. Now, Spencer Pratt is in third place. He was clipped over the weekend by Nithya Raman. Now, it looks like the runoff for the mayor's race in the city of Los Angeles is going to be between Karen Bass and Nithya Raman. Now, voter integrity, voting and ballot reforms, it's going to be the reaction because every action gets a reaction. And we are looking at allegedly election fraud and election rigging, at its highest point. It has met its apex, and that pimple has popped. So moving forward, there's going to be a whole lot of changes because I saw a situation where one of the legislators in the state of California is in hot water, and because they let over 800,000 ballots, mail-in ballots stay on the books because basically, they just need, we need to know how many ballots we need. We'll figure this thing out. It's crazy because in my lifetime, in two different occasions, I saw where on the night of the election, typically, you get a lead. Okay. Then it's the projected winner. And then next thing, they just keep on counting and everything rises with the tide. Okay. The last time that I saw this and it was pretty much, it vexed my spirit is when Biden and Trump was smashing Biden. But all of a sudden, all the networks and all the TV stations were in on the skim and basically says, oh, we're going to, stop the counting and we'll resume tomorrow morning. And then that next day, Joseph Robinette Biden was beating Donald Trump. And on record, Biden has gotten the most votes in American history in any election in any year. And that includes Barack Hussein Obama. But I knew something was going on in the state of California when we were waiting on, I was following this stuff because I kind of knew what was going to happen. So I was following this stuff. I say, okay, I'm on the live feed and I'm on the live chats and all of that. And then, I saw a outlet. Okay, well, we got another, voting dump from, mail-in ballots, out of this particular section. So 40,000 votes, right? Matter of fact, it was actually, 20,000 votes to be exactly. So 20,000 votes came in, it's just a small portion, but we got 20,000 votes, are in and, we're going to see. And then I turned the TV on and I went to another live outlet that was streaming and they basically was doing the same thing I was doing, but they were doing it live. And the 20,000 votes came out and then we did the math and 10,000 votes went to Karen Bass. And 10,000 votes, and 10,000 votes went to Nithya Raman. So 10,000 votes went to Karen Bass, 10,000 votes went to Nithya Raman. There was a dump of 20,000 votes. Spencer Pratt didn't get not one of those votes. And the fact that it was split even, somebody basically just said, okay, we'll give half to, whatever the count is, give half to Bass and half to Nithya Raman. Okay, because the last thing they wanted was a runoff with Karen Bass and Spencer Pratt. Okay, because Spencer Pratt literally should have won this election because of his popularity, because of the fires, because of crime, because of all of these things that's going on in the state of California. And then if you want to sit back and tell me, like Bass has said, and like Bass has said, crime is down. Okay, yes, crime is down because you are measuring crime against the apex of crime. Okay, but when you look at the news and you look at the media, you read the headlines and people shot over the weekend. Anytime you turn the news on, there's a shooting, there's a killing, there's a shooting. It does not give you the appearance that crime is down. But crime is not down drastically. But I looked up the numbers and in the state of California, they do not keep a live ticker. So they don't really tell us exactly what's going on. And I believe that that's, a tool to be able to manipulate or cook the books, just like what they did with housing. They moved a lot of the individuals, the homeless people from the city limits to, county limits, to county, because strategically they're mapped out to where you have county sections in the city of Los Angeles, just like in South Los Angeles, they consider that the county, but it's still in the city of Los Angeles. And it's crazy. But this is how they cook the books, and this is how they play the games. So when you sit back and say that crime is down, it's basically saying like an obese person said, I lost 10 pounds, and they want you to clap it up. Because, oh, congratulations, you lost 10 pounds. So how much do you weigh now? Oh, I still weigh 400. I mean, come on. It's just, like I said, it's just a talking point. It's just a talking point. And the mere fact, and I saw this and I stand to be corrected. I'll look it up again later. But I saw where in the state of California that there was just a 23% voter turnout. 23% voter turnout. And mail-in ballots was sent to every household plus the 800,000 of the ballots that should not be on the books. Okay. So we know something's going on. So just be on the lookout. President Trump and the federal government is already getting involved, and just be on the lookout for, voting, reform, ballot counting reform, because if we cannot, count the ballots same day, because prior to the elections, I saw, some outlets were, I guess they were projecting these, but I'm thinking they're counting mail-in ballots. There was like, Karen Bass 1, Nithya Raman 2, Spencer Pratt number 3. And I'm thinking like, wait a minute, like, are they already counting the ballots? Because they seem to, put her ahead and all of that. And I'm like, wait a minute. And then all of a sudden, oh, we still have to count the mail-in ballots. I mean, come on now, make it make sense. So what I'm saying is you can fool, some people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time, because we got to figure this thing out, because voting is, like I said, our ancestors fought to vote, for the right to vote, and for them to somehow put their hands on, this system. And now the integrity is untrustworthy. So when you can't trust the integrity of your vote, when you can't trust the local and federal government, when you can't trust mass media, then you got to really, understand that, listen, like we're just pawns on the chessboard of some higher powers, because they made the decision. Somebody at the top said, we need Nithya and Karen Bass, because Karen Bass going to do what we tell her to do. Okay. Because if you get a man up there, that has integrity, that believes in a God, he might sit back and say, no, I'm not going to do that. That goes against my moral turpitude. But Karen Bass is going to do whatever. Okay. Ever. Because they got dirt on her. If they didn't have dirt on her, why would they break into her homes? Why would they, seize 2 firearms from her personal residence? Why would they literally burn the 6th floor of the records building on Adams when, she was getting caught up in the Mark Ridley Thomas scandal by getting, free education from USC and sliding, grants and sliding things to the campus. Okay. So we know that this is a dirty game. So when individuals tell me you need to get in the pot, no. No, I'm a nonpartisan independent. We're going to be like the mediators, because this is an opportunity for, former Democrats to abandon the party. And I'm not saying, okay, go be a Republican. Okay. This is divorce proceedings. Okay. We want a divorce from the Democratic Party, and we can't talk about the other party, because we've been dealing with this situation for 60 plus years, and they owe us some alimony, to owe us more than just an apology. And they're going to be needing and wanting our votes, because, the swing voters, the nonpartisan independents, is a large voting bloc in the country at 45%. So they don't want to have that conversation, but we're going to play a little game. Now that the fact that, we're done with the cheating, we're done with the fraud and manipulation, game recognized game, do your thing. So now we got to get to the divorce. Okay. So Black America is divorcing the Democratic Party. I'm not saying African American, because a vast majority of African Americans party with the Democrats at their pride parades yesterday. Nothing's wrong with that. But in the sense of, what community are you with? Are you with the gay community, or are you with the Black community? And by default, if you my sister, if you my brother, by default, you with the Black community. So we have to do our job. So go ahead and have your fun and party and have your pride, and let your brothers do the dirty work, because our ancestors are literally, turning in their graves because of what we have done to what they have built. And we got, organizations like the NAACP, the Congressional Black Caucus acting as if, they're taking away our rights to vote. No, our right to vote. They're not taking away our right to vote. They basically just ended racial gerrymandering, which shouldn't even be there. Just like our mission is to end this prison industrial complex, because we're seeking a constitutional amendment to remove the slavery loophole from the Constitution, because it reads neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, unless criminalized. Because something is wrong when you pay more to house a prisoner in the state of California than you do to educate an individual. So we have to flip the table. We have to step out. We have to be the remnant. We have to sanctify ourselves, meaning separate ourselves from the Democratic Party. And please do not mention the other side, because this is Black America v. Democratic Party. Okay. So when I say this, we have to really be honest with ourselves, because the Democratic Party has a playbook. Well, all politicians have a playbook, but the Democrats have just put it out there. They have they have a playbook. Okay. And I'm going to give you, it's public record, and I'm going to give you some talking points of their reaction, because when we say, or any individual say, how can, Baz get 10,000 votes? There's a 20,000 vote dump, a ballot dump. Baz gets 10,000. Nithya Raman gets 10,000. Spencer Pratt gets none, because like I said, the powers that be, it's a game. Okay. It's a few people maneuvering and playing these games. And like I said, we are not going to be your pawns in your chessboard. And listen, it's time for us to get what is promised to us. So these are the things that they're going to say. I'm giving you their game, because last week I posted about this stuff, and a lot of those videos that I clipped up, they literally didn't get any views. Okay. I got more views about Jay-Z's hairstyle than the integrity or the election, of the election for the mayoral and gubernatorial race. Okay. And Steve Hilton, good luck. I haven't seen, where you stand right now, but I'm going to be looking at that today, but look like you might be out of it as well. But, we'll see what it is. Okay. So now, these are what the talking points that you're going to hear, because like I said, I got the Democratic playbook. Okay. I played the game long enough to get in a little bit, so now let's just go ahead and talk about the playbook. So when we sit back and when individuals challenge, the integrity of the election, this is what they're going to do. They're going to deny the allegations. Okay. And one thing they're going to say, there's no evidence of widespread fraud. There's no evidence of this. And then they're going to attack the accuser, meaning this is politically motivated. Okay. And then they're going to question the investigation, talking about, oh, this is partisan politics. This is just bias. This is, the Republicans are, and then they're going to shift the discussion. Okay. So what have Trump done for you? Okay. What has the Republican Party done for you? It's not about that. This is Black America v. Okay, the Democratic Party. And for white Americans, you guys are just a part of the black lawsuit, because I know it's a lot of you that can't stand the liberals, can't stand the Karens, can't stand the integrity of the party, because literally they cannot survive if they don't cheat. Okay. And then another one, they're going to claim persecution. This is an attempt to silence us. We're not going to be silenced. And then another play, wait for public attention to move on. And this is what's going to happen, hoping that the story fades away. Now, this is not a hot topic. And this is how I know, with the algorithms and, how this thing works, how I got more views and more engagement on Jay-Z's hairstyle other than a very important election. And it's like they know how to silence it, just hopefully go away. Cause this week, people really not talking about it, cause I asked a few people over the weekend, they like, look, love, I ain't vote, man. I ain't tripping. I'm like, okay, now that says a lot. That means we are not engaged. We're not galvanized, and we're done with what's going on. And then, once they wait for the public to move on, then if any wrongdoing is proven, then they minimize it. And this is when they say, yes, mistakes was made, but no laws were broken. Okay. And then you'll turn on the news or CNN or hear John Trapper or any of these guys on television, but there's no evidence of widespread, okay. If there's no evidence of widespread, but there's evidence of cheating. Okay. And it's crazy. And it's their playbook. It's the Democratic playbook. And I'm saying the Democratic playbook because this is Black America versus the Democratic Party. Okay. We have nothing to do with the Republicans. We're not Republicans. So we're not going to let you deny, deflect, attack, distract, delay, minimize, and move on because your playbook has been exposed and it is what it is. So, I mean, and it's the craziest thing ever because we have to, as American citizens, there has to be some pushback. Okay. So like the video, share the video. There has to be some conversations because if we don't talk about it, then they're under the impression that we don't care. And they're under the impression that they could just continue to manipulate and to, hoodwink and bamboozle the American people. So one thing I got to say, man, I'm sorry, Spencer Pratt. You got into a game that you don't know nothing about. These individuals, at least Karen Bass is a career politician. Her resume speaks for itself. She's a part of she's a part of it, so to beat her, is a big thing. And this is why she was so excited about, getting overtime because she didn't win. Okay. So now there's going to be a runoff, but the fact that she is able to, get back into the politicking again and for the midterm elections in November, because if she did not, get into the, at least the runoff, then maybe there would have been some exposure of her because if you did not know, Karen Bass has a past, of communism. Her husband is a Cuban person. There's an association with her husband or whatever. Like I said, allegedly with the firearms found in the home. There's with the brigade organization where they were bombing federal buildings and because like I said, everybody has a past and they call her Commie Karen. But it is what it is. But she's the mayor of Los Angeles. She's in the runoff. More than likely, she's going to smash Nithya Raman. That was the play. And like I said, render her unto Caesar's what is Caesar's. Okay, so she is the mayor. We're going to give her that respect, because like I said, this thing is bigger than Nino Brown. And what I mean is it's bigger than her, me, you, or anybody else, because these individuals that's making these power plays, the individuals that we don't see, these are the ones, because like the word of God says, it's not flesh and blood. It's powers, principalities, and these evildoers in very high places. So with that being said, Spencer Pratt, man, I'm sorry, man, but you did a good job. Hopefully, Bass could get can expedite, some legislation so you could build your home back. Your family could get back to the Palisades. Who knows what's going on. But like I said, we just, some squirrels trying to get a nut and we just a few pawns on the bigger scheme on their chessboard. So with that being said, man, have an amazing day. And like I said, be on the lookout for voter fraud and voting ballot reform, because if we cannot figure out how to, come up with a conclusion in terms of who the winner is in terms of our elections on the day of, okay, then the integrity of that election would always be questioned. So with that being said, I'm your man, Bouchon Glover, Better Black America TV, Better Black America Radio Show on Facebook. Have an amazing day. Peace out.